Senhoras e senhores, bom dia. Pedimos aos presentes que tomem seus lugares e aos portadores de telefones celulares que desliguem seus aparelhos ou os conservem no modo silencioso. É com grande satisfação que damos início ao Seminário Internacional de Promoção, Desenvolvimento, Apoio e Avaliação da Inovação, que tem por objetivo a criação de um espaço de diálogo, onde será possível analisar e discutir metodologias e experiências de organizações governamentais e empresas privadas, nacionais e internacionais, de programas de promoção e financiamento da inovação. A intenção é suscitar um denso debate nos itens que auxiliarão na formulação e consolidação de uma plataforma de avaliação a ser utilizada por agências como a própria Finep. Serão abordadas questões cruciais para o estabelecimento de uma cultura de inovação. Assim sendo, as sessões, foram organizadas de forma a trazer múltiplos olhares sobre o tema, não só de conferencistas, que são referência no país, como também a participação de especialistas estrangeiros, cujas experiências acrescentarão e enriquecerão o debate local. Este encontro foi promovido pela Academia Brasileira de Ciências, em conjunto com a financiadora de estudos e projetos, a Finep, e conta ainda com o apoio do Instituto de Pós-Graduação e Pesquisa em Engenharia da Universidade Federal do Rio de Janeiro, a COP UFRJ. Convidamos, então, para compor a mesa diretora, os nossos anfitriões, o presidente da Academia Brasileira de Ciências, Luiz Davidovich. E o presidente da Finep, Marcos Sintra. E, para compor a mesa, o diretor do Conselho Nacional de Desenvolvimento Científico e Tecnológico, nosso CNPq, Marcelo Morales. Ouviremos, neste momento, as palavras de abertura do presidente da Academia Brasileira de Ciências, Luiz Davidovich.
Bom dia. É para nós uma grande satisfação estar organizando aqui esse simpósio. Ele nasceu, de fato, em um almoço aqui na Academia Brasileira de Ciências. Estava o Marcos Sintra aqui, veio almoçar na academia, veio conhecer a Academia de Ciências, logo após assumir a presidência da Finep. E, nesse almoço, na conversa, comentamos que a questão da avaliação da inovação no Brasil era muito importante, né? Uma vez que recursos públicos estavam envolvidos. Então, era importante saber se eles estavam tendo bom uso, né? Se os recursos dados para empresas iam realmente para incrementar a inovação dessa empresa. E dessa conversa saiu, então, a ideia, né, de realizarmos essa reunião, que finalmente chega a bom termo, né? E começa depois de um trabalho extenso de várias pessoas que contribuíram para a organização desse evento. Então, eu queria aqui agradecer os organizadores do evento e os colaboradores. Do lado da Academia Brasileira de Ciências, a Lúcia Previato, que é vice-presidente regional da Academia Brasileira de Ciências para o Rio de Janeiro, Edmundo de Souza e Silva, professor da COP, Carlos Alberto Aragão de Carvalho Filho, físico como eu, né? Portanto, enfim, suspeito como eu, ninguém é perfeito, né? E que, no momento, trabalha para a Marinha Brasileira. José Roberto Boasson de Marca, também que foi professor da PUC, da Engenharia Elétrica, foi presidente do IEEE, né? IEEE, e que deu também uma grande contribuição. Márcia Graça Mello, nossa assistente técnica, que é da assessoria técnica da Academia Brasileira de Ciências, que tomou conta, então, da organização dessa reunião. Fernando Veríssimo, meu chefe de gabinete, que toma conta de praticamente todas as atividades aqui da academia, ajudando no seu desenvolvimento. Pelo lado da Finep, agradecer ao Fernando Ribeiro, Adriana Hagenauer e Eduardo Lopes Pontes, que tiveram uma participação muito grande na organização disso. Tivemos também uma colaboração fortíssima da COP, da UFRJ, em especial o PESC, o programa que contribuiu muito para a realização desse evento, e uma participação também intensa da CAPES. O professor Geraldo Nunes, que é vice-diretor da CAPES, ele deveria já ter chegado, mas nós não queremos atrasar mais a realização desse evento, e a contribuição da CAPES foi também importante. Enfim, foram muitas pessoas que colaboraram com isso. Do lado da academia, devo dizer que teve outras pessoas colaborando, nosso pessoal de comunicação, com chefiados pela Elisa Oswaldo Cruz. Enfim, a academia funciona realmente como uma organização em que os funcionários são muito ativos, né, e participam com ideias e muito intensamente dessa colaboração. Então, eu acho que esse seminário ocorre num momento muito importante aqui do Brasil, né? Um momento em que, mais que nunca, é preciso convencer as autoridades governamentais da importância da ciência e tecnologia e da essencialidade da ciência e tecnologia para o desenvolvimento econômico. Fato que já é conhecido em outros países. Em momentos de crise, vários países, aqueles que mais se destacam pelo seu desenvolvimento no mundo atual, eles têm aumentado seus investimentos em ciência e tecnologia, em pesquisa e desenvolvimento, porque sabem que esse é o caminho sustentável para a saída da crise. Aqui no Brasil, como todos devem saber, houve cortes recentes indo na contramão desse movimento dos outros países, né? Os Estados Unidos investiam até o ano passado cerca de 2,7% do produto interno bruto em pesquisa e desenvolvimento. A União Europeia resolveu chegar a 3% do PIB em pesquisa e desenvolvimento em 2020, em plena crise, né? A China, também em plena crise, promete alcançar 2,5% do PIB em pesquisa e desenvolvimento em 2020. Coreia do Sul e Israel já investem mais de 4% do PIB, né? Suécia já está em 3%. Enfim, internacionalmente, é conhecido o fato de que, em momentos de crise, você investe em pesquisa e desenvolvimento. Nos países desenvolvidos, em média, cada dólar investido em pesquisa e desenvolvimento traz de volta $5,5. Em alguns países, isso chega a $7, né? Então, ciência e tecnologia não é um gasto, é um grande investimento, né? E não é muito fácil, né, convencer as autoridades políticas sobre isso. Nesse sentido, a avaliação tem um papel muito importante, né? Ela mostra o retorno do investimento em inovação, o retorno do investimento em ciência e tecnologia. Também em outros países, é bastante conhecido o fato de que a inovação, especialmente a inovação disruptiva, está intimamente ligada ao desenvolvimento científico. Grandes revoluções do nosso cotidiano decorreram de descobertas científicas no mundo todo e também aqui no Brasil. Eu sempre costumo lembrar da nossa heroína nacional, né, a Joana Dobereiner, que, no seu laboratório na Universidade Federal Rural do Rio de Janeiro, inventou um método de fixar nitrogênio nos solos usando bactérias. Não só inventou o método, como se tornou uma campeã do método. Ela percorreu o Brasil dizendo: temos que espalhar essas bactérias pelo território nacional. Como consequência disso, a produtividade da soja brasileira foi multiplicada por 4. Mais ainda, graças ao trabalho da Joana e de vários outros cientistas que prosseguiram no trabalho dela, em particular da Embrapa, hoje em dia o Brasil economiza na importação de fertilizantes nitrogenados R$15 bilhões por ano. Então, o retorno que nós estamos tendo daquele investimento que foi feito lá atrás, no laboratório da Joana Dobereiner, é um grande exemplo de como a ciência ajuda o desenvolvimento nacional. E temos muitos outros exemplos. Mais recentemente, me lembro, há poucos anos atrás, as pessoas diziam: o pré-sal, isso nunca vai dar certo, né? Isso é uma aventura, isso é uma maluquice, né? E, no entanto, atualmente, o pré-sal é responsável por metade do petróleo produzido no Brasil. Um sucesso obtido em poucos anos, como? Milagre? Né? Não. Interação intensa dos laboratórios de pesquisa da Petrobras com vários laboratórios de pesquisa e instituições brasileiras, em todo o Brasil, né, que participaram dessa ideia, né, que atualmente é uma ideia exitosa. Então, o caminho da inovação é o caminho para o Brasil. Não vai haver desenvolvimento brasileiro se não houver inovação. No mundo em que até a carne é produzida atualmente através de células-tronco, há empresas que fazem isso, né, você precisa de 3 calorias para produzir cada caloria de carne, com esse método de células-tronco. Você pega uma célula de boi, né, e faz carne. Se você faz produz carne da maneira usual, na pecuária, você precisa de 23 calorias para cada caloria de carne. Então, esse novo método é extremamente econômico. No momento em que se fala que daqui a 20 anos nós vamos ter uma colônia humana no planeta Marte, né, a proposta do presidente da Amazon.com, né, no momento em que se diz que os computadores pequenos, né, daqui a 30 anos, vão ter maior potência de processamento de dados do que todos os cérebros humanos na superfície da Terra, né, nós não podemos ficar para trás. O Brasil não pode ficar para trás nessa atividade de inovação, né, e tem que ser arrojado, tem que ser usado, tem que apostar na inovação disruptiva, que vem junto com as descobertas científicas. Então, é dessa união entre ciência e inovação, né, que é essa união que a academia defende, né, porque é nosso papel. Nós temos agora 101 anos de idade, né, e desde o início da academia, que ela vem defendendo, né, a ciência de qualidade, a educação de qualidade e o desenvolvimento tecnológico do país. Então, esse simpósio é uma grande demonstração, né, um grande exemplo dessa atividade da academia, e eu fico muito satisfeito com a parceria que temos com a Finep, que é uma agência singular no desenvolvimento econômico do país, né, fundada há relativamente poucos anos atrás, comparados com os anos de existência do país, teve um papel importantíssimo no desenvolvimento econômico do país, um papel importantíssimo no desenvolvimento das universidades brasileiras. O papel da Finep nas universidades foi fundamental. Foi uma espécie de intervenção, né, de mérito nas universidades, que fez com que antigas oligarquias, né, perdessem o espaço e foram substituídas pelos jovens coronéis, né, que eram cientistas, pesquisadores, que mudaram o perfil das universidades. Então, a Finep eu considero uma instituição exemplar, né, e esse debate aqui, essa conversa, é no sentido justamente de azeitar, né, as funções, tanto do lado da Finep, como do lado da universidade, em benefício do desenvolvimento brasileiro, em benefício da população do país. Então, agradeço muito a presença de vocês todos aqui e vamos dar início, então, à nossa reunião, passando a palestra antes para os outros membros da mesa, aqui eu cumprimento vivamente, né, o Marcelo Morales, aqui, representando o CNPq, que é outra instituição fantástica no Brasil, né, fundada em 1951, né, e que produziu os cientistas que nós temos hoje, né, através das bolsas de estudo, através dos projetos que apoiou. Então, estamos aqui muito bem acompanhados, né, pela Finep, pelo CNPq. Então, vamos dar prosseguimento. Eu peço, então, a mestre de cerimônias, né, que conduza essa cerimônia.
Como muito bem apresentou o presidente da ABC, vamos passar a palavra ao diretor do Conselho Nacional de Desenvolvimento Científico e Tecnológico, Marcelo Morales.
Bom dia a todos. Primeiramente, eu gostaria de cumprimentar os ilustres presidentes da Finep, professor Marcos Sintra, e o presidente da Academia Brasileira de Ciências, Luiz Davidovich, nas figuras dos quais cumprimento todos os presentes. É com grande satisfação que parabenizo a nossa financiadora de estudos e projetos, a nossa Finep, que esse ano comemora 50 anos de serviços relevantes à nação brasileira. A Finep é conhecida por todos nós como a nossa agência de inovação e tem papel fundamental no desenvolvimento tecnológico brasileiro através do financiamento de projetos, que contribui para o futuro do Brasil. Várias foram e são as contribuições da Finep na indução das pesquisas inovadoras, e eu gostaria de repetir somente um exemplo importante que o Luiz já citou, que foi o financiamento de pesquisas em águas profundas, que levou ao sucesso da prospecção do nosso pré-sal, que hoje já contribui com mais de 50% da produção de petróleo no Brasil. São exemplos como esse que mostram que o nosso país possui uma pesquisa básica de qualidade, capaz de alavancar a inovação, a nossa economia e contribuir não só com o desenvolvimento econômico, mas também o social do Brasil. Mas a pesquisa científica e a inovação não pode viver do passado e deve estar de mãos dadas para alavancar continuamente e se avaliar dia a dia para que o caminho seja trilhado de forma mais promissora possível. Desta forma, parabenizo a Finep e a nossa ABC pela organização desse simpósio e que possamos sair desse seminário com contribuições importantes que possam contribuir que o Brasil inove sempre. O CNPq tem na sua missão também a inovação e está à disposição para contribuir através dos seus instrumentos para que possamos avançar na inovação do Brasil. Em nome do nosso presidente, Mário Neto, deixo um abraço a todos e sucesso a esse seminário. Obrigado.
Neste momento, passamos a palavra ao presidente da Finep, Marcos Sintra.
Bom dia. Quero cumprimentar o presidente da ABC, Luiz Davidovich, que nos proporciona esta maravilhosa oportunidade de encontrar a todos os senhores, convidados que estão vindo do exterior para brilhantar esse evento e nos trazerem uma mensagem tão desejada por nós da comunidade da área de ciência, tecnologia e inovação no país. Quero cumprimentar também Marcelo Morales, nosso co-irmão, e que nosso irmão mais velho, em realidade. O CNPq tem 66 anos e a Finep tem 56 anos e está comemorando esse ano seus 50 anos, e esse evento é parte desta comemoração, desse meio século de existência e de serviços muito importantes prestados ao país. Eu queria trazer aos senhores hoje aqui uma breve mensagem, criando uma espécie de um pano de fundo para a realização desse encontro. E eu acho que a apresentação feita pelo Luiz foi perfeita. A única restrição que eu faria é que ele é um físico, diz que é a grande suspeita sobre físico, e eu sou economista, então imagino que não deve existir em cima de mim, então, né? Os médicos... Então, eu acredito que o que eu vá dizer aqui deva ser descontado bastante por força dessa profissão que eu carrego. Mas, de qualquer maneira, eu queria dar um pano de fundo do porquê, nesse almoço que foi realizado aqui, realmente, a questão de uns 6 meses atrás, surgiu o tema da avaliação e surgiu o tema do momento que o país vive no que diz respeito à política pública orientada para ciência, tecnologia e inovação. E o objetivo dessa brevíssima apresentação que eu vou fazer, como eu disse, é colocar um pano de fundo para nós entendermos o porquê o momento é grave, como o Luiz mencionou. O momento exige grande reflexão de todos nós brasileiros, mas, sobretudo, exige uma difusão de conceitos que serão avaliados aqui ao longo desses 2 dias de seminários. Nós estamos falando aqui para pessoas que são do setor, pessoas que já conhecem a problemática que estamos discutindo, mas, infelizmente, nos parece que a sociedade brasileira ainda não se apercebeu disso que o Luiz mencionou aqui, da importância da ciência, tecnologia e inovação, dos retornos sociais que essas atividades trazem para a sociedade e da importância de estimularmos a continuidade permanente e a estabilidade de ações de fomento a esse setor no país. Infelizmente, essa conscientização ainda não é geral perante a sociedade. Eu trouxe aqui alguns dados, e por força do meu cacuete de economista, vou mostrar alguns números para os senhores. Esse número aqui mostra que nós estamos passando por uma situação extremamente difícil do ponto de vista econômico. O governo está levando a cabo um ajuste social, um ajuste fiscal de enorme magnitude. Não vamos entrar aqui no debate de se esse ajuste é necessário, se não é necessário. Eu, pessoalmente, acredito que sim. Eu, pessoalmente, acredito que sem esse ajuste fiscal seria a economia brasileira como um todo que desmoronaria, levando de roldão tudo isso, inclusive esta comunidade. Portanto, eu acredito que isso é um esforço meritório, mas existem maneiras e maneiras de fazer uma mesma coisa. E é exatamente isso que eu quero mostrar aqui aos senhores. Esse gráfico aqui atrás mostra a evolução do gasto público primário federal. Os senhores vejam que o governo federal ele gasta aproximadamente 19,5% do PIB brasileiro para as suas atividades. E a discriminação entre despesas discricionárias e obrigatórias está aqui exemplificada. Os senhores vão perceber que os dados, os gastos obrigatórios do governo federal saíram de 12,3% do PIB em 2013 e chegaram em 2015 a 15,06% do PIB. E os gastos discricionários saíram de 2,8% para 3,9%. Então, há efetivamente uma expansão do gasto público federal. Mas o que mais chama a atenção, neste caso, nesses números, é a enorme participação dos chamados gastos obrigatórios do governo federal. Quais sejam? Aposentadorias, salários, pagamento de dívida não é gasto primário, mas é um gasto obrigatório, pagamento de juros, e outras obrigações que são consideradas, digamos, quase que extra-orçamentárias. E todo o ajuste fiscal, que deve ser da magnitude de 2% do PIB, vai acontecer nesses 3,9% do PIB, que são os gastos discricionários. Ou seja, a primeira observação que nós precisamos fazer é que esse ajuste fiscal ele vai incidir muito pesadamente sobre as atividades discricionárias, e nós, ciência, tecnologia e inovação, é uma das atividades discricionárias do governo federal. A divisão embaixo mostra também como é que se dividem esses gastos discricionários. 37% vai para o Ministério da Saúde, 13% do PIB, dos gastos discricionários para a educação, 15% é PAC, 12% são atividades de desenvolvimento social, programas sociais, e apenas 23% efetivamente tem uma possibilidade ampla de ajustes, e nesses 23% estão incluídos os gastos de ciência, tecnologia e inovação, ou seja, o MCTIC, o Ministério da Ciência, Tecnologia, Inovação e Comunicações. Então, senhores, vejam, esse setor representa no Brasil 23% de 3,5% do PIB. É uma porcentagem pequena, mas sobre este percentual pequeno do PIB incidirá um enorme ajuste. Não é? O déficit primário brasileiro Esses são os resultados fiscais, né? Eles mostram a necessidade de se fazer esse ajuste, resultado primário caindo. Não vamos esquecer que o país tem hoje um déficit nominal, porque nós falamos muito, aliás, é uma coisa que só existe no Brasil, esse conceito de déficit primário, ele não é utilizado em nenhum outro lugar. Nenhum outro país utiliza o conceito do déficit primário. O que deve preocupar todo mundo, a uma sociedade, é o déficit nominal, ou seja, é o total de endividamento que um país soberano é obrigado a assumir o custeio das suas atividades. E os senhores vão ver que o nosso déficit nominal é 10% do PIB. É 10% do PIB. E nós estamos tendo um déficit primário também, ou seja, não estamos gerando recursos suficientes sequer para o pagamento do serviço da dívida acumulada. 10% do PIB ao ano é um endividamento explosivo. O governo está gastando 10% do seu PIB, sendo que hoje a carga tributária nacional é 35% do PIB, outros 10% são déficit. Ou seja, o governo está hoje despendendo 45% do PIB, consegue custear 35% e 10% ele é obrigado a rolar no mercado a cada ano. Por que eu trago esses números tão chatos, coisas de economista que, em realidade, só nos aborrece? Por quê? Face a esta realidade, olha o que está acontecendo com o MCTIC. A participação do MCTIC na execução das despesas discricionárias empenhadas pela União, em 2016, está em 1,4%, sendo que ele já esteve, em 2003, num patamar de 3,6%, ou seja, está sendo reduzido por aproximadamente 1/3 do valor que vinha sendo executado, grosso modo, até 2010. A partir de 2011, uma queda monotônica, praticamente, chegando a 1,4% em 2016, e em 2017 provavelmente será metade disso, ou 2/3 disso, chegando a 1% do PIB. Então, senhores, vejam como o quadro é preocupante do ponto de vista de recursos, do ponto de vista fiscal. E embaixo nós temos a arrecadação do fundo, que, em realidade, é o grande lastro de financiamento às atividades do Ministério e da Finep, e do CNPq também, em grande parte, e de apoio e de fomento à pesquisa, desenvolvimento, ciência e tecnologia. Bom, então eu mostrei isso simplesmente para dizer aos senhores que nós temos um problema fiscal muito grande. Agora, o que nos leva a esse debate? Frente a esta problemática, frente a esta enorme dificuldade de gestão financeira do setor público brasileiro, e frente ao enorme contingenciamento de gastos que está ocorrendo, como pode um setor como ciência, tecnologia e inovação fazer valer a sua importância e o retorno social que ele traz? E o Luiz aqui nos deu alguns breves exemplos. A literatura econômica mundial comprova fartamente, unanimemente, há quase poucos estudos contrariam essa grande tendência, mostrando que o retorno social das atividades de fomento à ciência e tecnologia são incomparavelmente superiores ao retorno social de atividades de investimento de mera reprodução de capital. Infraestrutura, ampliação do capital, investimentos no setor produtivo como um todo. E atividades de ciência, tecnologia e inovação mostram um retorno extremamente elevado. Qual tem sido a atitude pública hoje ao praticar o seu processo de ajuste fiscal? Cortes lineares. Cortes praticamente lineares ao longo de toda aquela pequena fatia dos gastos totais, que são os gastos discricionários. Então, o impacto em termos dessas atividades é gigantesco. E, segundo, ele não discrimina o que deve ser cortado, o que pode ser cortado, o que deve ser reduzido, o que tem baixo retorno social, daquilo que deve ser estimulado e deve ser ampliado porque tem um alto retorno social. Esta é a lógica mais comezinha de qualquer economista ou de qualquer pessoa que tenha um mínimo de reflexão sobre o tema. Mas, por várias razões, isso não é feito. E daí a razão de estarmos reunidos hoje aqui. O governo não tem critério de avaliação das suas atividades. O governo não tem critério de hierarquização, de ordenamento dos seus gastos, de tal forma, num momento como esse, havendo necessidade de corte de gastos, cortar em maior intensidade aqueles gastos de baixo retorno social, devendo até mesmo, como diz aqui o presidente Luiz Davidovich, e é feito em vários países, ampliar, mesmo no momento de dificuldade, aquelas atividades de alto retorno social. Eu estive presente no último G20 na China e vi quando o presidente chinês, todos os outros presidentes, enfim, estadistas lá, reclamando da situação econômica, dizendo que estavam fazendo profundos cortes de gastos generalizados, o presidente chinês falou: a nossa resposta à crise é aumentar os nossos gastos em ciência e tecnologia e tem um plano para aumentar em mais 2% do PIB nos próximos 10 anos, os gastos em ciência, tecnologia e inovação. Esta é a atitude que precisamos fazer, mas não sabemos e não poderemos fazer isso se não tivermos critérios de avaliação minimamente eficientes, se não estabelecermos uma sistemática que seja efetivamente absorvida pelo setor público, no sentido de estabelecer critérios de avaliação através dos quais essa hierarquização de gastos pode ser feita. E, para finalizar, uma rápida observação sobre o orçamento base zero. É isso que nós precisamos introduzir no nosso país. Aliás, o documento do PMDB, antes do presidente Michel Temer assumir, chamado A Ponte para o Futuro, né, mencionava explicitamente a introdução dessa nova técnica, nova não, uma técnica orçamentária que foi utilizada nos Estados Unidos na década de 70, o grande estimulador dessa técnica, desse sistema orçamentário, foi o ex-presidente Jimmy Carter, que, como governador na Geórgia, introduziu no estado da Geórgia o orçamento base zero. Hoje é uma prática generalizada, com várias modalidades em várias partes do mundo, em vários estados americanos. É isso que nós precisamos fazer. O que é esse orçamento base zero? É um sistema de orçamentação que não reproduz o orçamento do ano anterior como sistema de preparação de propostas orçamentárias. Nós que militamos no setor público sabemos como é que nós fazemos o orçamento para o ano seguinte. A gente pega o orçamento do ano passado, faz pequenos ajustes incrementais, aumenta um pouco, diminui outros um pouquinho, introduz alguns elementos novos e daí vai se passando, não é, para ano seguinte, sem uma avaliação criteriosa de que gastos, de que itens, que ações ou que programas deveriam ser estimulados e quais deveriam ser eliminados e cortados por completo, coisa que não existe. Se há uma coisa que não existe no orçamento brasileiro, alguma coisa a ser eliminada, cortada. Entrou no orçamento, não sai mais. E fica eternamente. Às vezes um pouco diminuído, às vezes sem nenhuma função, sem nenhuma atividade social, retorno zero. Mas ele permanece por inércia. A justificativa para a existência de um item orçamentário no nosso sistema é o fato de ele já ter existido no orçamento anterior. Uma vez entrando, não sai mais. Então, o que nós estamos discutindo aqui é critérios exatamente para implantar alguma coisa nessa linha do orçamento base zero. Nós precisamos, sim, estabelecer critérios de compreensão e entendimento do que merece ser continuado, do que merece ser ampliado e do que merece ser efetivamente cortado, reduzido ou até mesmo eliminado. E foi nesta conversa com o presidente Luiz Davidovich que resolvemos fazer esse seminário, discutindo, entre outros temas, né, não só políticas de fomento, mas também a questão da avaliação. Quais são os critérios de avaliação utilizados por outros países e como introduzirmos esta saudável metodologia orçamentária no Brasil, em todas as agências, em todos os ministérios, e aí sim, a disputa orçamentária que se instalou a partir da lei do teto passa a ser um instrumento até saudável de saneamento das finanças públicas. É até uma coisa saudável. Então, era isso que eu quis fazer, meramente como introdução aos senhores. Aqui são alguns gastos que o governo brasileiro, alguns incentivos fiscais, a discriminação dos principais incentivos, né, utilizados no país. E os senhores vejam que são volumes muito significativos, mas sem nenhum critério. Por exemplo, a lei da informática, ela está explicitada aí isoladamente ou não? É um dos incentivos fiscais que tem tido, em algumas poucas avaliações que eu conheço, resultados muito negativos. De certa forma, a Zona Franca de Manaus também tem tido avaliações não muito positivas. No entanto, eles vão simplesmente existindo, continuando a existir, sem qualquer questionamento. E vejam que são volumes muito significativos, equivalentes a 4,45% do PIB de renúncias fiscais ou de gastos tributários. Então, e para finalizar, um dado que eu acho muito interessante. Eu mencionei, está faltando uma lâmina aqui, mas Eu disse que a literatura econômica mundial hoje ela é unânime, não é, em termos de avaliação de retorno social de ciência, tecnologia e inovação, e eu não tenho dúvida disso. Não é? Esses são algumas publicações, alguns números. Há um trabalho também recente, feito pelo Hanush no Instituto Levi, na Inglaterra, que mostra que, para cada 1% do PIB gasto em ciência e tecnologia, o PIB aumenta ao longo do tempo, né, porque são normalmente projetos de médio e longo prazo, 9,92%. Ao passo que gastos em saúde aumentam 0,30%, em educação 0,25%, em defesa 0,03%, em infraestrutura 0,01%, em ciência, tecnologia e inovação 9,92%. Ou seja, são números assim absolutamente, eu diria até extravagantes, que comprovam a urgente necessidade de começarmos a discutir com muita seriedade isso que está sendo feito aqui pela ABC a partir desse seminário. Como eu disse, eu pretendi apenas colocar um pano de fundo, situar a oportunidade desse debate. Eu acho que o país, no momento, mais do que nunca, precisa começar a pensar muito seriamente em como esta disputa orçamentária instalada a partir da lei do teto e vai durar 20 anos, como ela vai ocorrer no Brasil. E a área de ciência e tecnologia tem que se preparar. Tem que se preparar para mostrar que veio. Tem que se preparar para mostrar quais são os retornos da sua atuação. E tenho certeza que, se formos capazes de fazer isto, toda este desânimo que o setor está vivendo atualmente poderá ser superado, porque poucas atividades, se é que alguma, irá superar o retorno social das atividades de ciência, tecnologia e inovação. Então, quero agradecer ao presidente Luiz Davidovich por ter tão eficientemente organizado esse seminário, a seleção de pessoas que certamente terão muito a contribuir nesta reflexão. Agradecer a presença de todos os senhores e, sobretudo, dizer que, ao completar 50 anos, a Finep está recebendo da academia e da presença de todos os senhores aqui um grande presente, o presente de podermos discutir um tema que nós vamos aprofundar e que eu tenho certeza vai ser capaz de estabelecer uma nova sistemática de avaliação de um setor que até então tem sido muito maltratado nesta fase de contenção fiscal pela qual atravessamos. Muito obrigado e bom seminário a todos.
E assim, com a mensagem do senhor Marcos Sintra, encerramos neste momento a mesa de abertura deste evento. Ao encerrar esta, desfazemos a mesa dos trabalhos, convidando as autoridades a ocuparem seus lugares na primeira fila deste auditório, para melhor participarem deste segundo momento do evento. Dando continuidade à programação, convidamos o diretor-geral de Desenvolvimento Nuclear e Tecnologia da Marinha do Brasil, Carlos Alberto Aragão de Carvalho, para mediar a mesa Políticas, Novas Perspectivas. Participarão deste painel o diretor da National Science Foundation para Ciência e Engenharia de Informática e Informação, James Kurose, e professor do Maastricht Economic and Social Research Institute on Innovation and Technology, Fred Good. Com a palavra, o senhor Carlos Alberto Aragão de Carvalho Filho.
Since our guests will speak English, I will do likewise. As you know, Luis already told you that I am a physicist. Nobody's perfect. And I have to clarify that I am not the Director General for nuclear development, nuclear and technological development of the Navy. In fact, that's Fleet Admiral Bento Costa Lima Leite de Albuquerque Jr., who has an even bigger name than mine. And the Director General is here very well represented by Rear Admiral Alfredo Muradas, who is the Director of the Technological Center of the Navy in Rio de Janeiro, and Captain Guilherme Cineiro, who is the Deputy Director of our Naval Agency for Nuclear Safety and Quality. And in fact, they are the best dressed members of the audience, as you can see. Now, we're running short a time here. So I would like to invite Dr. James Couros from the National Science Foundation to give us his talk. The talks will be 40 minutes, and then we'll have 10 minutes for questions. So Dr. Couros, please.
I'm really very, very happy to be here. Actually, I have an undergraduate degree in physics, and then I saw the light and became a computer scientist. And I've worked with faculty members here in Brazil for probably 2 or 3 decades now, and I've actually had several Brazilian PhD students supported by CNPq, and they're now back here as professors in Brazil, so thank you all very much. I want to thank the Brazilian Academy of Sciences, Finep, and also CNPq for the invitation to come here. I've been at the National Science Foundation now for about 3 years, and I'm going to wear my hat as a National Science Foundation worker rather than a University of Massachusetts employee. So I'm from the University of Massachusetts, and I've been serving in the US government as the Assistant Director for the National Science Foundation, where I lead the Directorate of Computer and Information Science and Engineering. So here's what I'd like to talk about today. I want to just give you a very, very quick overview of the National Science Foundation, and then I want to talk about the subject for today, really moving from basic research to innovation. And listening to Professor Davidovich and Sintra, it's very clear to me that in the United States, we have to make the exact same arguments that you are making about the importance of science and technology to the economy. And actually, I brought a video with me that we just produced last week, so this is just the second group ever to see it, that talks exactly about that. I'd like to talk then a little bit about the programs, the solicitations that we do at the National Science Foundation for innovation. And then I'd like to talk about what jointly my directorate, Computer and Information Science and Engineering, does with industry in the United States, some joint solicitations. And I'll keep it quick so we can keep up a little bit, pick up a little time. If you were to ask any professor in the United States, what does the National Science Foundation do? They would say, the National Science Foundation funds basic research, hopefully their research, right? So absolutely, we promote the progress of science. But the National Science Foundation, which was founded in 1950, its charter is much broader than that. Most faculty members, researchers in the US don't know that, but yes, to promote the progress of science, but also to advance the national health, prosperity, and welfare, and to secure the national defense. And over time, you see the importance of different aspects of our charter becoming more or less important again and again. And certainly my sense is that the contributions that we make through basic research funded by the National Science Foundation to the national health, prosperity, and welfare, and securing the national defense are increasingly important these days. So just a quick word about the National Science Foundation. The National Science Foundation funds all areas of scientific research, so physics, economics, computer science, social sciences, engineering. We really fund everything except for health research, which is done by the National Institutes of Health. In the United States, 83% of all computer science funding in basic computer science to academics and universities in the United States comes through the National Science Foundation. So that's a very big responsibility and a very large investment that's made. We in the SCI's Directorate fund many programs of national priorities. So we have special initiatives that are launched under different presidential initiatives in big data, in cybersecurity, in robotics, understanding the brain, high-performance computing and the National Strategic Computing Initiative, smart cities and smart communities, computer science education, and advanced wireless research. So these are 8 programs that over the last 3 years that we have started in collaboration with many other agencies within the US government. So my directorate, computer and information science and engineering size, our budget, and again, this is 83% of all of the United States investment in basic research in computer science is $935 million. The way we do research is we provide funding to the universities. So the money comes in and the money goes out. So we don't really internally spend that much money. It all goes to investments in universities. We make solicitation for proposals. In computer science, we received 8,300 proposals. They are all reviewed by peers who come in, and we make awards. Our funding rate is 23%, so that's the success rate, if you will. And you can see the numbers there for the number of people that we support. 7,200 faculty members, 6,500 graduate students, and 2,600 undergraduate students, just to give you a size of the investments that we make. Okay, so that's it, just a very high-level view of the National Science Foundation and the Directorate of Computer and Information Science and Engineering. And I want to turn now to this question that the speakers have already addressed, how to move from basic research to innovation. And so it was very interesting to me to listen to the earlier presentations, because somebody said, well, in Brazil, we have to make the case that other countries understand so well about the importance of basic research leading to innovation. And I will tell you, in the United States, we have to make that argument again and again and again and again. So I'm going to show you a video. We just showed this to the National Science Board. These are the presidential appointees who oversee the National Science Foundation. And I think you'll like it because it talks about how we move from investments in basic research to economic benefits. And so I think this is just the second time this video has ever been shown. It was shown for the first time last week. And let's keep our fingers crossed and hope that technology works here.
It began in the late 60s as a military-led communication network.
Until NSF opened it up by creating a backbone and laying the foundation for unprecedented connectivity that changed the world.
Real return on NSF investment.
America's is an innovation-driven economy, but new products and processes don't just burst on the scene fully grown. They're built on a foundation of years, even decades of basic research.
So why not just rely on the private sector for that research?
Corporations today are very heavy on the D side of R&D. If the research takes more than 3 years to become a product, the research side is seldom funded. That's where government organizations like the NSF play a crucial role in filling that research void in corporations.
NSF-funded research underpins vast segments of the American economy.
Enabling growth across the spectrum of American industry.
Our investments help launch the mobile revolution,
3D printing revolution.
tissue engineering, and the rapidly booming field of nanotechnology.
They're boosting our resilience to natural hazards and man-made threats.
And helping transform American industry through advanced manufacturing. The net result? Jobs.
And hundreds of billions of dollars added to the economy.
Not long ago, 2 NSF-funded graduate students created a PageRank method based on web links. Today, we know their work as Google.
NSF-funded research built on game theory would soon become the foundation for Google's ad sales system, key to their profits.
And we're helping develop more profitable agricultural practices and technologies.
Higher yield, drought, and disease-resistant crops that need less water and fertilizer.
NSF funds startups and small businesses with radically innovative ideas to help get their discoveries out of the lab and into the market.
We're a small company, and our original technology was based out of a university. We needed funds to see how well this could really work.
Major market leaders like Qualcomm and Symantec, or once tiny startups too, helped along by NSF funding.
Qualcomm was very small when it received its first SBIR grants.
Well, it meant the difference between starting and not starting. It meant everything in those early days.
NSF investments in people help develop the workforce of scientists, engineers, and technicians, critical to maintaining the technological edge that drives American economic growth.
NSF, investments in basic research,
Innovative ideas
discovery.
and discoverers, all in the national interest.
The result is almost unimaginable returns for the economy and the American people.
So you can see that in many ways we market ourselves and we talk about the value proposition for the National Science Foundation, yes, in terms of basic research, but also in terms of the impacts that we have on the economy, exactly what we're talking about here. So let me see if I can go forward. Okay, so I want to say a few words then quickly about the impact within computer science in particular of investments in computer science and national economic competitiveness. And I want to talk about this diagram that you see over on the right-hand side here. We call this the tire tracks diagram because it looks like there are tire tracks going up in time. And let's take, there are two, I know the writing's a little bit hard to see. If you look at the three tire tracks going up on the right-hand side, the research area there is computer networking. And what it shows is that NSF and DARPA, another US research agency for the DoD, started making investments in basic research in computer networking in the 1970s. That's the red line you see. The blue line shows that industry, companies like Cisco, for instance, started in the 1980s and even a little bit before that, in the late 1970s. The green line you see is when, the thin green line is when that market segment was $1 billion industry, and when it gets fatter, the green line, that's when it became a $10 billion industry. And actually the arrows going back and forth like this are all examples of a research paper, an artifact, a piece of hardware, a software, a person who moved back and forth between industry and academia. And so you see over time the very tight coupling that we have in the United States between faculty members who are in industry, go to academia, go to industry, folks from industry who go into academia, and the flow of ideas and artifacts back and forth. One thing I'll also mention is look at the time scale there. We're talking about decades. Sometimes it takes decades for the research investments really to pay off. So these are just two examples, software and networking. You should go like that. It got rotated, so I'm sorry about that. But this just shows this happens over multiple technology areas. So you'll notice that that ends in 2010. I'm a researcher in computer networking, and I will tell you, in the 1990s, all you had to say was, I'm a computer networking person, we brought you the internet, and everybody said, oh, that's so great, you're so valuable. And about 2000, the year 2000, people started saying, well, what have you done for me lately? You know, the internet's yesterday, what have you done for me lately? So I wanted to address that question by saying that our impact in computer science continues today. And here are two examples. One is in machine learning. So machine learning, deep learning, convolutional neural networks are all the rage right now. I will tell you the basic research behind deep learning started back in the late 1970s and the 1980s in reinforcement learning. So we are just seeing now some of the real payback of investments that were made in the 1970s and in the 1980s. In an area in computer networking, software-defined networking, this is now an $18 billion market in 2018, and this has happened much more quickly. The first large research grant that NSF made to Stanford University in 2008, which really launched the beginnings of software-defined networking, were made just 10 years ago in 2008. So when people say, well, what have you done for me lately? We say machine learning, software-defined networking, and on and on and on. And so we do see this story of investments being made in fundamental research, making their payoffs in areas such as big data and machine learning, and in software-defined networking. There's a really nice quote there that you probably can't see from Eric Schmidt, who's the CEO of Google, now Alphabet. And he said, NSF is where all interesting research gets started. And so that is our value proposition to the country. This is where basic research gets done. Okay, whoops. Let me move on, and I want to talk about two particular programs that we have at the National Science Foundation on specifically on innovation. And actually, you heard Irwin Jacobs in that video. He's the CEO of Qualcomm. Qualcomm actually got started as a very small company funded by the National Science Foundation through the SBIR program there. So let me tell you about two programs that we have. The first is called I-Corps. Okay, the first one is I-Corps. This is all about fostering entrepreneurship. So this is an NSF program, and it's really training for would-be entrepreneurs. If you receive an I-Corps grant, it involves 3 people in a team: a technical lead, an entrepreneurial lead, and a mentor. Typically, the technical lead is a professor. The entrepreneurial lead is often a graduate student whose work is at the center of something that may be commercialized. And a mentor is often somebody who has started a company before. And these groups come together and they go through a 2-week, what we call a boot camp, where you go and you do training very intensely for 2 weeks. Part of that is you have to make 100 cold calls to potential customers. So you learn about you learn about the value proposition, you learn about the market, you learn about how to make pitches to people, and then you have to call 100 people or meet with 100 people to pitch them your ideas. And that's sort of at the core of this. It's really a very first step. You're still doing research and you're thinking, I've got an idea, maybe I can transition that into the marketplace. And so this is the very first step that one does there. And so you see we have teams. These are the individuals who do that, and we have sites and nodes. We have a network of centers, if you will, that do the training for I-Corps. Just to give you an idea of how many people have participated in that, we've had almost 3,000 participants in I-Corps. I think we've now passed 1,000 teams who've gone through I-Corps, and we have 41 different kinds of courses, 361 startups created. So we're talking about if we have metrics, how are we going to evaluate the program? We have people who are going through these now. And I-Corps is moving from the National Science Foundation into a number of other federal agencies in the United States. So the other program I wanted to tell you about that we have sponsored by the National Science Foundation is what's called the Small Business Innovation Research Program, SBIR. Qualcomm, for instance, was a company that got started with an SBIR, and there's another program very close to it called STTR. The way to think about these is America's Seed Fund. That's sort of their title for it. And these programs provide funding. Think of it as equity-free startup funding to continue to conduct R&D, research and development activities, and to de-risk the technology for commercial success. Now, if you want to apply for an SBIR grant, you write a proposal. You say, here's my technology, here's the research I still need to do. That research is again evaluated by a panel of your peers, and then funding decisions are made from that. And so this is the way the SBIR program at NSF is structured. There's a feasibility phase 1. This is typically about $250,000 of investment there to continue the research with an eye towards commercialization. Phase 2 is much larger. These typically last 2 years. These are up to $750,000. And this is research towards building prototypes. So this is really getting ready to transition technology. In phase 3, This is when, in phase 3, we have private funding, equity funding come in. There's also a phase 2B where NSF matches private funding 1 to 2, and that's up to $500,000. So these are programs for NSF-funded researchers who have technology. Typically, they will first do I-Corps to learn about innovation and learn about starting companies, to make their 100 calls. And then there's a program, SBIR and STTR, which provides funding, some seed funding, to just begin that process of moving towards commercialization. Okay, so what have we done? We've talked about the importance of basic research and moving from basic research through innovation into the marketplace. We've talked about I-Corps and SBIR, STTR as innovation programs. The last thing that I'd like to talk about is just what we are doing within the Directorate of Computer and Information Science and Engineering to partner, so this is on research solicitations and other activities with industry. So it was very interesting to me to read, to see the report that was just discussed in President Sintra mentioned a paper on the value of research, an EU policy paper. In the United States, there's a report that came out called Restoring the Foundation, the Vital Role of Research in Preserving the American Dream. I think that's probably the US version of the value of research paper, because it talks all about the value of research. And there are 3 main points in that, or 3 main chapters in that report. And the 3rd chapter is about how to expand. It's discussion of ideas about expanding the partnership between the federal government, universities, and industry, and how to build that partnership. And that's something that I've been working on very hard at the National Science Foundation. So you might ask yourself, well, why should we be interested in partnerships? Well, we can leverage resources, because honestly, industry has resources that even in government we cannot come close to having. For technology transfer, that when our researchers, again, work with folks in industry, there are clear technology evolution paths. And then finally, there are already many existing relationships between academia and industry, typically one-on-one, one company with one university researcher. And we're trying to do something more national in scope here, and we're not replacing those. We're enhancing those existing relationships. So let me just tell you what we do, and then I think I'll be done and we'll have time for questions and comments later. So first of all, at the National Science Foundation, we do joint research solicitations. So for example, in my directorate, we have done 4 solicitations with Intel. If you're a faculty member, when you apply for a research grant, you can say, I want this to be joint NSF and Intel, or just NSF. And if it's joint NSF and Intel, then it goes through the regular review process. The Intel researchers participate or observe that review process. NSF makes its investment decisions. They decide, we decide what to fund. And then Intel makes their own decision about additional activities they want to fund. And so the relationship is generally 1-to-1 matching. For every $1 million that NSF puts in, Intel will put in $1 million. We've done that with VMware for security in the cloud. With Semiconductor Research Corporation, we've done 5 joint solicitations with them, mostly in hardware and architecture and hardware supply chains and security. So we do joint research solicitations. We also partner with industry on workforce and educational activities. We have an activity called Computer Science for All to increase the pipeline of students in high school and also diversify the pipeline to bring more, to broaden the various groups of students who are coming in. So we have activities there. If you have NSF funding, so you apply to NSF and you get funding for a large-scale project, you can apply for additional funds if you will bring in industry partners. So we have the Industry University centers for research collaboration, so we do co-funding there. And then we have separate programs for technology transfer, in addition to what you saw for SBIR and STTR. And then finally, we have research infrastructure-based collaborations with Amazon Web Services, Google, and Microsoft. For instance, they've put in a total of $12 million for cloud services and cloud credits for researchers who are funded under our big data program. And then finally, a program we have for platforms for advanced wireless research. So let me skip over that. And this is the SAIS and Intel partnership. You see the listing of the 4 different research areas. Actually, we have a 5th solicitation out now. And again, the amount of investment is usually 1-to-1 matching between NSF and Intel. And then finally, the platforms for advanced wireless research. These are experimental research platforms deployed in the wild, if you will, in cities and in towns. These are testbed facilities to take ideas off the benchtop and out into the real world. So my directorate is committed $50 million in funding for up to 4 research platforms. An industry consortium has come together and also put together $50 million in industry research funding for this program. So again, a 1-to-1 match between industry and the National Science Foundation. Okay, so that's it. So I've been a professor for 30 years, and I've only been working in government for 3 years. When I teach, I always hope that 2 or 3 weeks from now, my students remember 2 or 3 things. So here are the 2 things, well, 3 things, I guess, that I hope you'll all remember 3 weeks from now when you say, what did that guy from NSF say? Well, 3 things, okay? First of all, remember the timescales for transitioning from basic research into innovation. Sometimes it happens very quickly, but sometimes it literally takes decades to do. So look at machine learning, for example. Look at the tremendous economic benefits that are being generated by machine learning. $40 billion for just one Google location. And yet that's building on investments that were made 20 and 30 years ago. Some of the specific programs that I mentioned, SBIR, STTR, and then the partnerships that we have with industry. So again, we'll have time for questions and more discussion. Again, I want to thank Finep and the Brazilian Academy of Sciences and CNPq for the opportunity to come down here. Again, I come to Brazil, I think, maybe about once a year. It's always wonderful to come down and visit and meet new people. So thank you again for the opportunity to be here.
Well, thank you, Professor Kuros. I would like now to introduce Professor Fred Gold, who is a professorial fellow at the Maastricht Economic and Social Research Institute on Innovation and Technology. I think that was done on purpose. The initials make up the word merit. So please, Professor Gold, your floor is yours. I suggest that we leave the questions for both presentations for the end. And then questions can be asked in Portuguese, English, even Korean, because we do have a Korean translator. Thank you.
You have a microphone? I do have a microphone. Good. Well, I notice that we're all opening the session with confessions about earlier lives, and I will admit to having taught theoretical physics for 15 years at the University of Durham in the UK. I won't tell you what turned me into an official statistician, as we don't have enough time, and also I don't understand it. Now, behind me should be a presentation, and there is, and I will keep to the time allotted. We've had interesting opening remarks which laid out the problem. We've had some very pertinent material just delivered by my colleague. And I am going to concentrate, or try to concentrate, on new perspectives of STI policy. And because we tend to run STI together, which is something I try to persuade my students not to do, I will spend a little bit of time on, it works, on science and technology. And science and technology, we like to think we understand. If we look at the Frascati manual, which is the OECD manual, which gives us some guidance in collecting and interpreting research and development data, R&D happens everywhere. And we know it happens in business. We just had insights into that, in government, in higher education, and private nonprofit institutions. So we've been measuring that for over 50 years. One would like to think over that time we have learned something. We also have related scientific activities which some people measure, and UNESCO is trying to revive the manuals so we can talk about related scientific activities. And by that I mean large databases, geological surveys, the work of granting councils, intellectual property management, and statistical offices. They don't do research and development, but they certainly help R&D happen, and they are important. So we get into science and technology policies. Remember, this talk is about policies. And we can see in our countries that we can do direct support for R&D, grants and contracts, support for human resource development in universities, for technologies, or we can do indirect policies. Indirect policies are rather fun because you really don't know what they're going to do. So you can have an R&D tax incentive, which is extremely useful in some countries, and in one I can think of, it is particularly favorable to small firms that are established in the country. And once you get above a certain size, you get a different kind of tax benefit, but everybody gets it, every firm in the country. So they're trying to focus on the little firms who get a tax refund. The bigger firms get a lower rate, but they get a tax deduction, which means that they have to have revenue to put the deduction against. One of the effects of this policy is that it keeps firms under the critical point where they're going to move from getting money in their hand to having a tax deduction because they don't make enough revenue in order to take advantage of that. And that is an unforeseen consequence of a particular R&D policy. Perhaps a new perspective, which is what I'm supposed to be talking about. We can also build infrastructure like supercomputers, high-speed broadband networks. We can put up the Brazilian Tall Tower Observatory and stare at the rainforest. We can do all sorts of things, and there's lots of research going on up that tower, as well as it being a facility. So there are different kinds of policy with different kinds of implications, and that's before we get to the social and economic end of the business. So, am I on to that? I am. Indirect support continued. I can support transfers among sectors, and we've just had some excellent examples described to us, so I'm not going to spend time on that. And we can have support, and this is quite important, for a better understanding of how the system works. And we've got two examples. NSF's Science of Science and Innovation Policy Program, which Jack Marburger pushed for when he was a presidential advisor on science and technology. And that is continuing. And what it is trying to do is to encourage people to think about the science of science policy. Political scientists do it all the time, except they do it in a different world. The science of science policy, what makes science policy work? And when we did the evaluation of that program some years ago, the discipline which took least advantage of it was political science. curiouser and curiouser. Also public understanding of science, which is supported by NSF. So we have a system which, if we understood it, I would argue we do not, we could bring to bear on that system policy coherence. I'm going to come back to policy coherence because it is difficult to establish and difficult to manage. And I am now going to leap into innovation. I am going to keep science and technology on one side. I've just done it. And talk to you now about innovation. And we're going to look at what innovation does for us. You all know what innovation is, because I assume you get up every morning and read the Oslo Manual, which gives us guidance on how to measure innovation and how to interpret the results. And the one thing I would like you to get out of this, or maybe I want you to get two things out of this, you see the definition of innovation behind me. You can deal with the implementation of a new or significantly improved product. We can go on to process, organizational change, and market development. Implemented is a key word. And what does it mean? It means for a product that it is implemented when it is introduced on the market. Introduced on the market. And that's all innovation is. You put the product on the market, and that's where the story ends. And I want to emphasize that because a lot of people wander about saying innovation is the solution to all problems known to humanity. So if we innovate, everything is solved. Not true. But the definition doesn't tell us that. It just says, get it to the market and it's done. Even if it destroys the financial sector, we think back to pre-2008, when there was significant innovation in financial services in a country I won't mention, which went viral and destroyed the economies of many other countries. So, I mean, innovation is lots of fun. You can do good things with it, and you can do bad things with it. So I'm going to come back to that, but hold on to the fact that 25 years of Oslo manuals, this is the third, and we're still working only on the business sector. However, even the Oslo manual admits that innovation can happen elsewhere, even in universities, in hospitals, in government departments. So how are we going to deal with that? And perhaps we will get some way towards the answer as we go on. So innovation activities, I simply want to lay out what people measure when they are looking at innovation activities. And then I'm going to make another key point. We can see capital expenditure on machinery, equipment, and software. Software was capitalized in the national accounts in 1993. That's why it's a capital expenditure. Training and learning by doing related to innovation, purchase of knowledge, the formal generation of knowledge, which is research and development. And I put it in that order deliberately because I do a lot of work in Africa. And African countries, their leading innovation activity is buying machinery, equipment, and software, not doing R&D, which may in some circles be regarded as, again, the path to salvation. If you're in Africa, you may want to rethink that. If you are in other countries, you may want to rethink that. So we have a set of these activities which are measured regularly in innovation surveys, certainly in Europe with the Community Innovation Survey, and in the US with the Business R&D and Innovation Survey. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. So innovation activities are interesting and important. They don't necessarily give rise to innovation, the getting of that product to market. I'll come back to that as well. Systems theory in one slide and 2 minutes. Not bad for a topic which takes several weeks to teach, but there it is. We're simply going to divide the world up into actors. Those are firms, government departments, institutions of education, of research, and they all do things. They all have activities, and I've just given you a list of activities, and they link together. We just heard a lot about linkages, and they are important, and there are some of them. And they have short-term outcomes, which could be jobs and growth. They can have longer-term impacts, like well-being. Well, wouldn't that be wonderful if it all worked that way? But it doesn't. A point I will observe at the moment, if there are any survey statisticians in the room, and I suspect not, if you do your survey and you discover that in the country you happen to be working in, the rate of innovation among firms is 65%, and you run into the minister's office and you say, in our country, 65% of businesses are innovative, minister. The response of the minister is, that is very interesting, but how does that get me re-elected? And the issue from the minister's perspective is, I don't want to hear about 65% of firms being innovative. I want to know that if they are innovative, they are creating jobs and economic growth. So I can tax the economic growth and I can provide jobs to the unemployed of this country. That gets me re-elected. So we've got to be a little careful about just talking about measurement of innovation. There's got to be a reason for it. The final point on that slide is subject to framework conditions. Framework conditions are rather fun. If you think of the organization which is engaged in the innovation, it can do its thing, but surrounding it is a multi-dimensional box, boundaries, which influence that innovation, like trade rules. Try selling genetically modified foods to the European Union. Doesn't quite work. There are other rules and regulations which restrict your activities, so you can't go there. So that opens up another policy dimension, given that we are talking here about policy. You can act directly on the firm. You can give it incentives to innovate, or you can bring in highly skilled people from universities on exchange arrangements to help. That works for the firm. But if what you are working on is not going to be tradable, then maybe you want to think again. And those regulations can be changed by the government of the day if they wish to do it. Let's look a little bit at what we can do with innovation policy. I hope you can read that slide. What I am doing is looking down this column at innovative firms. And I'm looking at those that do R&D. And that is the nirvana we're all trying to move towards, where all firms do R&D, make good use of grants from the government, and generate innovation, put stuff out there on the market, and wonderful things happen. Or they don't. Again, lots of examples on the other side. And that is where all policy people would like to move all businesses. Now, if you go down to the diagonally opposite quadrant, you've got a lot of firms that don't do R&D, don't innovate, and yet they still manage to stay in business for a long time. One of the countries I worked in for probably too long used to dig lots of things out of the ground, put them in a truck, drive them to the nearest border, happened to be with the United States, dump them over the border, large amounts of money were handed back. Nobody had to think about trees or oil or minerals. They just had to get them to that dotted line along the map, and everything was good. No innovation, no R&D. So that's where they would sit. Then we've got some smaller firms that learn by doing. They try to do it, it doesn't work. They think about it again, they talk to their friends, they go to the pub, they learn things, and eventually they get something they can sell. And then they worry about better ways of getting that to market. So there are these people down here that maybe with policy you want to move up there, but that is a question. Maybe they're perfectly productive down there in that quadrant. Then going back to the previous speaker, in the upper quadrant, we've got non-innovative firms that spend millions, if not billions, on research and development. Strange. But if you're a startup firm and you're working in a biotech of some kind that relates to the human condition, you will go through a large number of clinical trials before any product gets anywhere near a human. And that can take a decade. And during that time, they are not classified as innovators because they're putting nothing on the market. How do you work with them? That's a good NSF question. NSF is very good at working with those people. Let me move on to some real numbers, also from NSF. And this comes from the Burdus survey. And what I want you to notice is that we've got 1.22 million firms that we are looking at. And 57,000, that's a small number, are doing research and development. 1.16 million are not doing research and development. We then go and look at product and process innovation. And we notice that the aggregate is 14%. When that came out of Burdus, people weren't very happy. It was far too low in their view. But look at the rate, the 64% of firms that innovate if they are doing R&D. What that tells me is that they are larger firms, and larger firms have a greater propensity to do R&D. But look at the non-R&D firms, 12% of them are innovative. That's a low number, but then go to the last column and notice that there are 137,000 of those and 37,000 of the ones that do R&D. So if you are in the policy business, how do you motivate a firm that doesn't do R&D? And there are lists of policies for dealing with those things, but we're taking a new perspective here. That's what it says in my title, and that is what I would like you to think about. Well, so much for the past and all of its failings or lost expectations. I am now going to leap into the future. Remain calm, it won't last very long. I'm going to lift from an OECD publication, Emerging Trends, that's good, it is there. And this is the Science, Technology, and Innovation Outlook 2016, where they look around at what is happening, what is influencing people like you who are struggling in the policy environment, or those of you who are trying to measure it, or those of you who are trying to understand it. We all fall into our own little heap. Demography is an issue because if you look at the rate of growth of the population in Africa, where I spend a lot of time, there are going to be a lot of Africans in 20 years or 25 years. How are we going to deal with them? We've got natural resources and energy problems all over the world. If there's anybody here from Colombia, why don't you have more windmills out there generating power when you could have, you're in the best part of the world to capture wind-generated energy. Climate change and environment gets us towards the Sustainable Development Goals, which I'm sure you all read every day, all 17 of them, and wonder how we're ever going to deal with any of them. But that's a different seminar. Globalization, role of governments, which is changing. The role of governments are changing. Economy, jobs, and productivity. The society and the state of society, health, inequality, and well-being. In some countries, health care is non-existent. People die if they don't have money. They are excluded. That gets us to inequality and other issues that our left-of-center colleagues like to talk about at length. So there are emerging trends out there. We aren't operating in isolation anymore. Globalization is not something that academics talk about. It is real. So you cannot do anything in this world without involving organizations outside your country. So, emerging trends, and how do we deal with them? There is another policy issue for those of you who are policy people. Now let's look at innovation policy. This is lifted almost verbatim from the new, note the word new, because there were two other high-tech strategies beforehand which weren't new. This is new. And one of the things that's new about it in Germany is that we add the word innovation for Germany. Took them a while to get there, but they're there. And they are trying to bring to bear high-tech and innovation on their digital economy and society, which is a big thing. From the previous lecture, we learned that. The sustainable economy and energy, if you're in Germany buying your gas from the Russians, you worry about energy. You worry about other ways of supplying it. Innovative workplace is code for an innovative culture. People like to innovate. Well, lots of people don't like to innovate because it means taking risk, getting something wrong, being fired. This is not ideal for career development. Healthy living is a great opportunity for doing all sorts of innovative things coming out of work in hospitals, especially in Europe, especially dealing with geriatrics, which is no bad thing given the age of some of us. Intelligent mobility, moving cars around without drivers, and other such frightening things. Civil security, buried under that is cyber security. Again, an issue for the information economy. How you govern this is a problem, and it also tells you something. If the president is running the innovation policy, then you have some hope of something happening. If it's in a group of ministries, okay, but less hope of something happening. And if it's run out of a single ministry, forget it. It depends upon whether that minister has got any clout in cabinet or not. And if not, it doesn't happen. This is the reality of life we're talking about here. Although a sub-department of government in a tax ministry will do the R&D tax credit, and that will be just fine. So we move on from there. And we will get back to something a little more concrete before my time runs out. Developing policies. I'm looking at direct policy, R&D related or not, human resource development, what our technology focus is, aerospace, ICTs, biomaterials, the tower, regional focus, international cooperation. All these are policies that you may wish to think about. But why? You don't think about a policy because it is a good thing to have innovation. It's got to do something. So does it deal with global challenges, economic development, or the other things in that list? Well, let's move on to framework conditions. Remember, I said to you that your policy can act on the organization, the government department, or the business, or the hospital, or the university that you want to change. So you give it incentives to innovate. But you also have that unit operating within the framework conditions which can actually act against what you may be doing. So we got regulation. We do have regulation. That's good. Environmental regulation, health and safety, trade and cooperation. Immigration is quite a topic in Europe these days. All these boats going across the Mediterranean causing concern. There's a reason why Germany is taking them in, and it gets us back to demographics. The median age in Germany is 44. They want somebody to pay for their pensions. I don't blame them. In fact, I'm quite sympathetic. We can also have norms, internationally agreed standards, and de facto standards. Think Microsoft as a de facto standard. History, culture of risk aversion. Therefore, we won't stick our necks out. We fear doing that. Therefore, we won't put new products on the market. This is something we may want to change. And education. Everybody's had an education. Therefore, you're experts, every one of you, on education. The Minister of Education comes along with a reform, and you don't like it because you know about education. And I mean, this is not a joke. This really happens in some societies. Corruption, violence, disease, inequity get in the way of innovation. So I will make that point and move on. So implementing and monitoring policy. And I'm almost done if somebody is keeping track of this, but I think I'm still within my time. The minister wakes up on Friday morning, wanders into the office and says to the team, Monday afternoon, I'm going into the Parliament and I'm going to announce a new innovation policy. So the team thinks, well, there goes the weekend. So they sit down and they write a new innovation policy, give it to the minister as he walks into the Parliament. Minister reads it, people applaud wildly, minister goes away. So far, so good. But the problem with this is, for innovation policy to work, it has to be implemented. And that means you have to have some dialogue with the people involved. You can use existing instruments, laws which are already there. You can use those to influence the policy. You may need legislation, new legislation leading to regulations to support the policy. You may require incentives which you have to change the Income Tax Act. And all of this requires, once you've done it, and only once you've done it can you do this. So innovation isn't just about talking. Innovation is about implementing, and then you get your statisticians released from wherever you keep them, and they do surveys, and they may do case studies, and that gets you to evaluation. Monitoring and evaluation. Statisticians should never do evaluation. They can do monitoring. They're supposed to be at arm's length from government. Leading to policy learning. And that is the most important part of this cycle, admitting that you've got it wrong. Going back to the top and redoing it and getting it right and going around that circle a couple of times. That takes real courage. I once walked into a ministry. I was working in the country at the time. I proposed measuring biotechnology activities in the country so we could follow the new policy on biotechnology being the solution to all human problems. And I was told, we aren't funding that because you may find something that doesn't fit with the minister's view. Well, thank you very much for that. I will go and do something else for a living. Anyway, back to innovation does not happen in isolation. The Oslo Manual deals with the business sector. We know that. Innovation in the business sector is influenced by linkages with public sector. That's a lot of you people. And it can also happen in sectors, and that requires a new perspective on innovation policy. Notice we don't talk much about innovation in hospitals, in universities, in government departments. We do talk about innovation in the private sector. So maybe we should talk about innovation in the Navy, for example. I'm sure it's happening as we sit here. So can innovation in the public sector be measured? And what does innovation policy then look like? And I think that's one of the challenges I'm going to leave you with. If we can measure innovation everywhere and do policy everywhere, how do we deal with it? How do we deal with the policy? So solving the problem, and I will go through this quickly because you don't want to know about a lot of academic literature. Remember, innovation requiring introduction to the market. So in 2012, a suggestion was made that we change that to make it available to potential users. Now, once you've done that, you've dealt with the market, so it can happen in a government department or a university or a hospital. There are other things that can be done to make this happen. And you can answer the Mazzucato question. The Mazzucato question arises from a working paper that came out of the European Union some years ago, where she pointed out that just about everything that we carry around with us, smart objects in our pocket, big objects on our desk, came out of research and development, probably funded by NSF or DARPA, in the public sector in the United States, and made a compelling case. Nobody had been tracking that, but it went into the private sector where they took every idea they could get hold of and ran with it. And some of them did very well out of it. And we'd had some examples in the previous presentation. So, almost done. Innovation in all sectors of the economy. And you can read the slide at your leisure. But where we are at the now, and we're getting to current research, is generalizing the definitions of innovation so that they can be applied not just in the the business sector, but in all sectors. What this is going to do is make measuring the linkages, what goes back and forth, or just in one direction, between institutions, new important indicators which tell you something about how the system works. So that's the goal. So final slide, maybe we can answer the Mazzucato question more easily. We've got a system-wide view of policy, which means that those of us who are systems theorists may have a better understanding of what's going on. We may not. We look at consistent measurement of the activity of actors in each sector. So we've got the same way of measuring in all sectors, which makes comparison a little easier. And the linkages become the important new thing to measure, giving rise to outcomes and impacts resulting from linkage across the sectors. So that is where I'm going to end it. There's lots of stuff out there you can read if you really want to read. Some of it is extraordinarily boring, but that's the end of the presentation.
Very much to the speakers for keeping within the allotted time, and we even gained a little time. Eu vou mudar agora para tentar estimular as perguntas. Nós temos 10 minutos para perguntas e, por favor, levantem a mão e utilizem o idioma de preferência. Professor Edson Watanabe, da COP.
Bom, vou aproveitar para fazer a pergunta, primeiro para o professor James, com relação esse conceito do iCorps. Nós estamos tentando treinar algumas startups, junto com um professor lá de São Paulo, ex-professor nosso, Flávio Greenspan. E me parece bastante lógico e bastante interessante a forma de treinar. Mas uma pergunta que eu fiz para ele logo no início é que esse sistema parece bastante lógico. E a pergunta que eu fiz é se o Steve Jobs passaria num processo desse, ou mesmo o Mark Zuckerberg passaria, porque o sistema de inovação americano me parece que ele extrapola qualquer regra. E esse sistema iCorps está muito bom para as empresas, eu diria, talvez em massa. Aquelas que realmente revolucionam, e a gente precisava umas 2 ou 3 dessas, não sei se passaria nesse sistema.
Okay. Thank you very much for that question. As I understood it translated, it was a great question asking about the I-Corps program. There are many successes, so startups coming out of that, but the question was, would a unicorn, we call them unicorns these days, like Apple and Steve Jobs or Facebook, actually come out of an I-Corps program? Golly, it's a really hard question to answer. I don't know if Steve Jobs would call 100 people and say, you know, he had a very, from everything I've read about him, he had a very strong vision about what he wanted to do, and he just followed that vision. And so I don't think that I-Corps is the answer. I don't think anybody thinks I-Corps is the answer to all innovation. I think the real value of I-Corps that I've seen, and I've had friends and colleagues at my university who have gone through it, is that it forces you to ask some basic questions up front to understand the landscape and to contact potential customers. And that's not the only way to get started, but I think, especially among some of my, I'm trying to think of what a nice way to say this. You know, they're more hopeful. They're maybe not quite as focused as what it might really take to start a company. I think it's really good for some people to at least get that introduction, and I think that's really the sector of academia that's best served by I-Corps. I think it's wonderful for people with vision like Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg to be able to just go ahead and what they want to do. I think in the professoriate, these kinds of more training and introductory programs are still very valuable. I'm not sure whether they would produce the next Steve Jobs.
Eu diria que, ao fazer a sua pergunta, que as pessoas se identificassem para os nossos... Por favor.
Eu sou a Adriana Aguenauer, eu trabalho no Departamento de Planejamento da Finep. Eu tenho uma pergunta para o Dr. Kurose. Você estava falando que algumas inovações demoram décadas até chegarem no mercado e se transformarem efetivamente em inovação. Gostaria de saber como a NSF faz para avaliar essas inovações e continuar financiando elas ao longo desse processo para que não seja cortado e uma inovação tão importante deixe de chegar ao mercado.
Thank you very much. Actually, that was the question that I was going to ask Fred Galt, exactly that question. When we do evaluation, how do we do evaluation over 10 and 20 and 30-year timescales when in political administrations and congressional administrations look for results on shorter terms? And I will tell you how I do that. So part of my job, I do not lobby. I'm not allowed to lobby legally. But I do go to Congress and other places to talk about the value of the investments. And we can tell story or example after example after example after example of investments that have been made and what's happened. And so I find that those examples, so that's why I put up that slide on machine learning. It's why I use that example on software-defined networking. Those are examples. Sometimes 10 years is relatively short, but it's getting to the 10 years is getting to the period where you can think, okay, I can see payoffs in 10 years. When you think about doing evaluation of something you did 20 or 30 years ago, I just think that's very hard. To answer your question, the way we talk about that is we do that primarily through examples. You saw that we have presidents of of major corporations. Irwin Jacobs from Qualcomm, which is a huge company in the wireless space, got started through SBIR grants. And we find that telling those stories, that narrative, is very, very powerful, and we have lots and lots of examples like that. It's very hard to do in a statistically rigorous sense. I will absolutely grant you that.
Luiz Fernando Belo, tá? Analista de mercado de capitais, diretor da associação. É uma pergunta talvez um pouco fora do contexto, mas é que, não resistindo à presença de tantos físicos e economistas na plateia, eu sou economista, tá? Uma coisa que está muito esquecida há 10, 20 anos, eu não vejo mais noticiário sobre nada do que aconteça da evolução, não só científica, como prática, do que anda acontecendo com a coisa nuclear. Há 10, 20 anos atrás, a gente só ouvia falar em átomos, átomos e mais átomos, aproveitamento de átomos, e as coisas subiram do noticiário. A gente sabe que é uma grande evolução na área médica, mas eu queria saber o que ainda existe de inovação e se é uma boa coisa para a gente continuar investindo firme nessa coisa nuclear.
Yes, I think I lost that one. The question was if I understand it, I'm having some difficulty with translation, in which the nuclear question may have been lost, but what I caught of it was whether innovation in the nuclear business, I assume we're talking about energy here rather than annihilation of mankind, but I mean that's all part of the spectrum, is still worth considering. And there is certainly, in terms of simply measuring innovation, and I'm now stepping back from other issues here, you can continue, and people do continue in the nuclear business, to do new things with new reactors, new ways of building things. Look at Hinkley Point in the United Kingdom, building a reactor which never has been built before anywhere, the French and Chinese initiative. So it is happening, it does happen, and there are people who argue that if you manage the decommissioning and you cost it when you are doing the proposal, and decommissioning is expensive, then you can still put out there a competitive product in terms of electricity for domestic use. So it is out there. We do have the Greens in Germany who get extremely excited about nuclear energy, and this has slowed the program down. France is doing perfectly well doing this sort of thing. About 80% of their electric power comes out of nuclear reactors. So it depends on how you view the outcome of the innovation. And not all outcomes, nuclear waste as an example, are necessarily desirable. I don't know whether I've answered your question, but I am struggling with translation. I think we have another question.
Eu acho que eu posso ajudar nisso, porque, afinal de contas, é uma área na qual eu tenho trabalhado recentemente. Então, existe, sim, inovação na área nuclear. Em particular, há uma proposta que começa a se tornar mais, em suma, aceita e a ser implantada, que é a utilização do que em inglês chama-se Small Modular Reactors, são pequenos reatores modulares, mais seguros, tá certo? Cuja utilização tanto pode ser para propulsão como para várias outras finalidades, aí incluído produção de água, né, em regiões inóspitas que têm problemas com... Você pode utilizar isso para dessalinização, para produção de energia em regiões distantes, etc. Mas não é só aí. A área nuclear não se restringe à energia. A área nuclear fornece radioisótopos para as mais variadas aplicações, dentre elas aplicações, inclusive, médicas, radiofármacos, estão aí para tratamento de câncer e outras enfermidades, tá certo? A área nuclear é utilizada em agricultura, a área nuclear é utilizada em materiais. Por exemplo, para você fazer, da mesma forma que você faz tomografia em gentes, você faz em estruturas, né, utilizando, por exemplo, feixes de nêutrons. Então, é uma área que tem uma gama enorme de aplicações, e aí, se vocês me permitirem puxar um pouquinho a brasa para a minha sardinha, né, a Marinha do Brasil é, no nosso caso, uma força que tem se dedicado, ao longo dos anos, a um programa nuclear, né? E o Brasil tem um programa nuclear. Uma das estrelas desse programa nuclear é o reator multipropósito brasileiro, que a gente espera que seja construído para a produção de radiofármacos. A outra estrela, por conta da Marinha, é exatamente um reator modular, né, que está sendo produzido no chamado LabGene, que é em São Paulo, que vai ser a propulsão de um submarino nuclear que está em construção. Mas, só para dar continuidade aqui, nós temos ainda uma pergunta do Luiz e depois Sérgio. E aí eu acho que a gente vai ter que encerrar. Não, ainda temos, 5 minutos mais. Luiz, por favor. Queria que você se identificasse.
Uma pergunta, professor Kuros. National Science Foundation, nos Estados Unidos, é uma agência que tem um orçamento... O orçamento federal dela, se não me engano, é o 5º ou 6º. Tem outros departamentos que têm um orçamento federal muito maior, como é o caso da Defesa e do National Institute of Health. Eu queria que você indicasse alguma coisa, como se dá essa relação, né, entre os programas do Departamento de Defesa, os programas de saúde e os programas da National Science Foundation, para a gente entender como é que o sistema funciona, porque é um sistema um pouco diferente do Brasil, que tem um outro tipo de coordenação. Para o professor Fred, pelo que eu entendi da sua última transparência, do slide, sobre o paradoxo da Mazzucato, né, como responder ao paradoxo da Mazzucato, me pareceu que tem alguma contradição, algum tipo de diferença entre como se mede e como se avalia, né? Eu estou medindo o passado e estou tentando avaliar o resultado desse passado para frente em 10, 15 anos. Né? Então, acho que talvez você pudesse esclarecer um pouquinho mais esse sistema de avaliação entre os indicadores do passado e como que eu estou vendo mission-oriented, os programas para frente, sobre a luz de que indicadores? Se os indicadores medem o passado e não medem causalidade, eles estão simplesmente medindo gasto, não causalidade, a dinâmica do sistema.
So thank you for the question. Let me first comment about the National Institute of Health. So maybe just give you some numbers since you asked for relative sizes. The budget for the National Science Foundation is $7.5 billion per year. The budget for the National Institutes of Health is about $35 billion. So it's 7 times bigger than 5 to 7 times bigger than the National Science Foundation. The research covered by NIH, the National Institute of Health, there's 2 ways they fund research. They have their own internal NIH researchers, so those are the in-house researchers, and they have the extramural, the researchers that they fund in universities. At the National Science Foundation, all of the researchers funded are funded outside of the National Science Foundation, so we do no research within our own walls. The National Science Foundation is the only agency in the entire US government that funds broadly across all of science and engineering. NIH is very disease-oriented, and so they focus on biomedicine, maybe a little bit more applied, if you will. So some of the research ideas that maybe get started and find their way, think about CRISPR, for example, or some of the genetic biomedical research going on now, has its roots in NSF-funded research that might have happened 5, 10, or 20 years ago. So in some sense, some of the NIH research is a little bit downstream of a little bit later in time in that process of moving towards application than NSF-funded research. One good example is the NIH has a program called BD2K, Big Knowledge from it's big data to knowledge to action. And this is more the application of machine learning in the biomedical sphere. So it's not basic research in machine learning, but the application of machine learning. For the DoD, let me just say that the DoD is a mission-oriented agency, and I've been funded many years by DARPA. The people who have DARPA grants, they're not called researchers, they're called performers. You get a contract, you're told what you're going to do, you have milestones that you hit along the way, and it's very clear what the target is longer term. So most of the DoD research tends to be much more mission-oriented. It can still be very basic. I mean, DARPA funds lots of basic research, but there's a knowledge of what that downstream use might be in a military context.
Thank you. I'm glad you asked the question because it deals with a topic I left out of my slides, so this is extremely convenient. What you are talking about is measurement and evaluation, perhaps monitoring and evaluation, and you're concerned about this saying nothing about where we are going and the future. Now, I think what we have to bring into the picture is foresight, which is a discipline in its own right, rather than reinterpret evaluation. I've spent too much time in my life on evaluation committees, and what we do is confirm that the subject matter is being addressed. So if we're doing nuclear research, let's hope we're doing nuclear research, and we confirm that. And then we look at whether the resource allocation is efficient and effective, and nobody is using funds for other purposes. So that is fairly straightforward, is a well-established discipline. But I agree, it doesn't tell you where that program is going to go the moment the evaluation is completed. Foresight is less of an audit function. It brings together experts who share their knowledge about that particular area and consult colleagues who work in the area who try to answer the question, where is this going to be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? And it gets fuzzier and fuzzier the farther down the road you go. But I think a foresight function is extremely important to feed into policy and to reinforce policy learning. So thank you for your question.
Uma questão para o Dr. Kuroz. Na National Science Foundation, eu soube que a NSF criou uma área de avaliação de impactos. Recentemente foi criada uma área de avaliação de impactos na National Science Foundation. E, na sua opinião, qual é o principal obstáculo para se fazer a avaliação sistemática, permanente, dos programas da National Science Foundation?
Thank you. So thank you for the question. And yes, actually, I think maybe about 2 years ago, the National Science Foundation started an activity specifically on evaluation in our Office of Integrative Activities. I think we're up to a staff of 3 people now. It's led by Anand Desai, right, from Ohio State University. I will tell you that the conversations that I've had with him exactly echo the question that was asked earlier, and that is, how do you measure impact over long periods of time? And honestly, I think they're still struggling with that issue. We can put out numbers in terms of numbers of grants and numbers of participants, but trying to determine the impact and the impact on the economy in particular, I think, is very tough over that. And we are still, I mean, we have to answer that every year as a directorate. When we do our annual reports to Congress, we have to talk about what our impact has been, and trying to talk about impacts of programs that we've been funding now for 20 or 30 years. We usually highlight the ones that have become very important recently, like machine learning, like software-defined networking. But I think that long-term impact, I think that's the biggest challenge that they face. And in my conversations with Anand Desai, I think that's what they're wrestling with the most. I'm sorry, I can't provide a better question than that, a better answer than that, because I think we're still working on exactly how we're going to handle that.
Nós já estamos realmente com um problema de tempo e queria sugerir também, estava previsto um intervalo de meia hora, eu proponho que a gente reduza em 10 minutos e que retorne aqui 10 para meio-dia. E, mais uma vez, agradecer aos nossos palestrantes e agradecer ao público pelas excelentes perguntas. Muito obrigado.